Isaac Asimov is one of the best-known science fiction writers in the world. But he didn't just write science fiction. He also wrote mysteries, histories, children's books, college textbooks, and even dirty limericks. Since he was known as one of the big three science fiction authors during the 50s and 60s, along with Robert Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke, I wanted to dig up 10 little-known facts about Isaac Asimov, because I am Daisy Ex Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Isaac Asimov was born in 1920 in Petrovichi, Russia. His family were Russian Jewish millers who immigrated to America in 1923 and opened, of all things, a candy store. With an IQ of 160, he graduated high school at 15 and then went on to get a Bachelor of Science in 1939 and eventually went on to get a master's and doctorate in chemistry. He began writing short stories to the pulp magazines in the 30s and 40s, but his writing career didn't really take off until the 50s with the publication of the first of the Foundation and robot novels he is so well known for. So let's take a look at 10 little-known facts that you may not know about Isaac Asimov.
Number 10.
Asimov was a serial sexual harasser. Okay, I was shocked to discover this just reading Asimov's Wikipedia page, so I had to dig a little deeper, and I was hesitant to include it here, but I also don't want to be the one who sweeps unpleasant facts under the rug just because I like their writing. But from all accounts, Asimov frequently groped women, even at conventions, making a really uncomfortable atmosphere for women. And when confronted, his response was to write a book, The Sensuous Dirty Old Man, where he wrote, "The question then is not whether or not a girl should be touched. The question is merely where, when, and how she should be touched." Anyway, this has been covered in detail by Alec Navala-Lee in an article which I'll link in the description below. Read the article, come to your own conclusions, then let me know your opinion down in the comments and whether it affects how you see his works. Personally, I still greatly admire Asimov's writing, and in this case, I think I'm able to separate the art from the artist, but boy, that can be sometimes a bit of a hurdle.
Number 9.
Isaac Asimov wrote a movie musical for Paul McCartney. Okay, let's lighten things up. Apparently, Paul McCartney hired Asimov to write a movie script for a rock opera about aliens impersonating rock stars. Asimov wrote an outline called 5 and 5 and 1. And it's about these aliens who are these energy beings. And they come to Earth in the bodies of lizard people, but they're not the lizard people, they're these energy creatures. So they jump from the lizard people and hop around various creatures on Earth until they possess members of a band and try to take over the world because they think they can dominate humans through music. It's a pretty wacky story, and McCartney ultimately rejected it. And Asimov said later, nothing ever came of it because McCartney couldn't recognize the good stuff.
Number 8.
Isaac rarely wrote about aliens. Now, what was really unusual about the Paul McCartney movie script or outline for a movie script was that Asimov rarely wrote anything regarding aliens. If you look back, he's mostly known for stories about humans and robots, not aliens. Allegedly, this stems from some earlier stories he wrote where he got a lot of criticism when he made his aliens superior to humans. However, he later wrote The Gods Themselves, which contained aliens, and it may be my favorite Asimov novel, which he published in 1972. The title comes from the quote, "Against stupidity, the gods themselves contend in vain."
Number 7.
Asimov was rejected from Columbia College. Twice. Now, why would Isaac Asimov, when he graduated from high school at age 15, and remember he had genius-level IQ, be rejected from Columbia College in 1935? The reason was that Columbia said, quote, "Our quota for Jews for the coming year was already filled," end quote. He had the last laugh because when the junior college he attended closed down, he was transferred to Columbia, and that's when he got a degree in chemistry in 1939. But he wanted to become a doctor and applied to 5 medical schools in New York, but was rejected by everyone. So he decided to focus on chemistry. He applied to Columbia's graduate school again and was denied again.
Number 6.
Asimov probably would have made a terrible doctor. One of the reasons Asimov studied chemistry in college was because he couldn't handle zoology, which is what he was initially interested in. Not because he couldn't handle the coursework, but because he could not dissect an alley cat. He refused to do it. I probably would have refused too. In fact, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Asimov was a cat person. After all, he wrote the short story Time Pussy. That's about time-altering cats.
Number 5.
Isaac Asimov had extreme acrophobia and aviophobia. As much as he wrote about spaceflight, Asimov could not deal with personally flying. He had a crippling fear of heights, acrophobia, which extended to the fear of flying or aviophobia. Apparently, he tried riding a roller coaster at both the World Fair and Coney Island, and both times that did not end well. He tried flying, but after 2 flights, he swore never to go on an airplane again. So, in order to travel to other continents, he would only take cruise ships. Oh, he took cruise ships so often that sometimes he'd get paid for being part of the entertainment as a featured speaker. Can you imagine taking a cruise and having Asimov give a lecture?
Number 4.
Asimov had beef with Star Trek. Asimov shares an early dislike of Star Trek with Harlan Ellison, but while Ellison raged against the treatment of his script, The City on the Edge of Forever, Asimov had a more general gripe. In 1966, Asimov wrote an essay in the TV Guide arguing that sci-fi television, specifically including Star Trek, were poor representations of science fiction. This was a punch in the gut to Gene Roddenberry, who was a big fan of Asimov, and Roddenberry wrote to Asimov to explain why Star Trek was true to sci-fi because they had scientific consultants and really tried to be scientifically accurate. Roddenberry also argued that Star Trek could create new fans to science fiction, fans who would buy books by Isaac Asimov. Well, the argument worked. Asimov did a 180-degree turn and became a big fan of Star Trek. He was even a consultant during Star Trek's run and became good friends with Gene Roddenberry. In fact, Roddenberry tried really hard to make a movie based on I, Robot, though that never came to be. Even though they were friends, Asimov never stopped pulling punches because he was very critical of Star Trek V, The Search for God, though he was taking Gene Roddenberry's side against a William Shatner treatment of a script. Not that it helped. Star Trek V may be the worst movie in the Star Trek franchise.
Number 3.
Isaac Asimov coined the word robotics. Everyone knows that Asimov developed the 3 laws of robotics. It is referenced in so many places. Say it along with me. Number 1, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Number 2, a robot must obey orders given it by human beings, except where such orders conflict with the first law. And number 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first and second law. But did you know the term robotics was created by Asimov? Now, not the word robot. Robot was coined by Karel Čapek in 1921, which is derived from a Slavic term for slave, which is interesting. But Asimov expanded that to robotics.
Number 2.
Asimov died of AIDS. Now, what's interesting about that is that Asimov's HIV status was kept secret until 10 years after his death. He allegedly got AIDS through a blood transfusion for a bypass surgery he had in 1983, but at that time, AIDS had such a stigma, people were freaking out. There was no treatment, Reagan was completely MIA, evangelicals were gleefully saying that this was God's punishment to the gays. It was a horrible, horrible time. So it was Asimov's doctors who convinced his family to keep his HIV status a secret. It wasn't until 2002, 10 years after he died, when his family revealed the cause of death. Janet Asimov, Isaac's wife, wrote, "I argued with the doctors privately about this secrecy, but they prevailed even after Isaac died. The doctors are dead now, and Isaac's daughter and I agreed to go public about the HIV."
Number 1.
Asimov was in the Guinness Book of World Records. According to the 1985 Guinness Book of World Records, Asimov was America's most prolific writer, having published 285 books at that time. After 1985, that number would ultimately go up to 300, but let's look at the 285 books in 1985. So let's do some math. At that time, he had been writing for 46 years. So that means he averaged publishing over 6 books a year. That's insane. What's more insane is he wasn't the most prolific in the world. If you're curious, at that time, he was beat out by a couple of British writers. Romance author Barbara Cartland published 373 books in 1985, or by 1985, but she wasn't even at the top. That honor went to John Creasy, who published 564 books, mostly crime novels. But in America, it was Asimov who was a writing machine who never seemed to quit, at least in 1985. So those are my 10 little-known facts about Isaac Asimov. Did any of them surprise you, or are you a super fan that knew them all? Let me know down in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, let me know if there are any other writers you want to know about. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.